what do you do when you've got a few days of freedom? You know, maybe get on your bike and cycle 400-ish miles back home again. You know, that's a possibility. So we're 5 days before, and I am sewing some waterproof trousers and a stem bag, and just, you know, generally getting to the point where I'm like, do I really need all of this waterproof stuff? And then I'm like, I'm going to Scotland, I need all of the waterproofs. So I'd be vaguely following the Second City Divide route, which is a bikepacking route, but I ride on a touring bike with panniers and carry quite a lot of stuff. 4 days before starting, we got up really, really early to catch the train. Got to the station, they were like, maybe not, you'll be able to get there. Got to Preston, and then no trains were headed north. So in the end, we got back on the train, came back into Manchester, and got in the car to drive up to Scotland. We stayed a night with my granny, which was absolutely lovely, and ate lots and lots and lots. We then went to Edinburgh and met up with some friends, ate some really good ice cream before making it to Glasgow to see more friends, see the sights, take some photos, see some kittens in the window. We also went to the cathedral, which had a really, really lovely service, and looked out for ghosts in the necropolis. And then it was time to pack my bags and say bye to Dan. He headed off in the car, and I headed off to eat some ice cream and then wait a little while before I met my warm showers host for that evening. Day one, so I started off at my warm shower host's house. She was super, super lovely. I climbed out of Glasgow and headed out to the wind farms. Here you can see how big the wind turbines are compared to me and my bike. Super lovely gravel paths. Sped along them. Had to clamber over a gate, but you know, someone put a concrete ramp up one side, so that was helpful. These cows very much wanted to join me for lunch, but there was a cattle grid between them and me, which I was quite glad about. Some narrow country lanes, but managed to get to the campsite, did a little bit of washing, allowed to dry in the sunshine, ate an awful lot of snacks, and cooked a good tea. And you know what? Had a beer, because that saves me 440 grams of weight to not carry the day after. You know, best reason to have beer, right? And then headed off to bed. Day 2 dawn wet. I got down to the tent, put on my poncho, sorted breakfast, got on my way. Tried to keep warm. Some nice roads to begin with, some kind of gravel, and then some mud. And I pushed up a lot of hills today. I did about 65 kilometres in total, fueled on a lot of fruit and nuts, a lot of shortbread, and watched a lot of sheep as I went past. I did end up getting turned back at the gates of a wind farm by a security guard, so I had to go all the way back to the road and followed the cycle path near the motorway for quite a long way, but it was fine, it was fast. I saw another cycle tourist, and that was quite nice. Then the sun came out later in the day. I planned to stop in Muffet and ate a really good custard slice there, but the campsites were teeming with camper vans and caravans, and I didn't think I would fit, so I headed up the hill to look at another one, but they were full. So I ended up camping along the Annandale Trail. I filtered my water, found a spot without too many cows looking at me, and cooked my tea and read for a while before I popped up my tent, because it was light till really late. Such a beautiful evening. Day 3 I was headed for Hoyk and some warm showers hosts who very kindly agreed to have me. I cycled approximately 80 kilometres, starting with a 40-minute push up the hill, and then a glorious cycle to Tala Reservoir, a big hill up with some stinging hail, and then Megget Reservoir. Absolutely stunning. Made it to the Glen Cafe at St Mary's Lock and ate lots of soup and cake, accompanied by a whole host of motorbikers. We took the hilly route across the tops on lots of gravel paths, walking up and down a few, and then eventually made it into Hawick. Day 4 was my longest day. It was 110 kilometres. Originally, I'd planned it to be 2 different days, but on the advice of my hosts, I cut out quite a few of the forest trails around Kielder because they've had other cyclists who've got desperately lost. I saw a furry caterpillar, had a look at Hermitage Castle, which was built in around 1240 and has a legend that one of its owners was arrested and then boiled to death in molten lead. I crossed through into England. Having made it to Kielder, I continued on through the forest, heading for Hadrian's Wall. Some pretty nice roads until the national cycle route that I was following spat me out onto some gravel. There's a lot of forestry commission logging around, and so a lot of the roads have been kind of upgraded so that the lorries can get along. At one point when I moved over to the side, I thought the grass verge was solid, but it really wasn't, and so me and my bike went head over heels down into the grass. It was quite soft though, it was alright. Made it to a super lovely cyclist and walkers campsite and met lots of people walking the Hadrian's Wall in either direction. Day 5 was a slightly shorter day after the mammoth day the day before. It was only about 45 kilometres, but I stopped off to begin with at Vindolanda. Extremely impressive Roman ruins and reconstructions, and I really enjoyed their collection of shoes. Once I got going, I was on quite a few bike paths and had some cuppa soup for lunch to warm me up from the damp weather. The poncho wasn't so good because it was so blustery. Ended up going across the viaduct and then realising there were stairs and having to navigate all the way down and all the way back up, and slid down on my bum at some point in the mud. Went to get some food in Alston, and a Dutch lady on a quad bike did a big about turn in the middle of the road to come back and check that I definitely had somewhere to stay tonight because she'd done touring in the past. I did though. I camped behind Garrigill Village Hall in their campsite. A slow start to a 75-kilometre day for day 6. Decided not to continue up the Second City Divide route because it was on the Pennine Way and it was just too rocky. But I ended up going up a hill and then back down all the way to the Pennine Way because I dropped my purse. Met lots of cyclists doing a sportive, and once I'd fixed the fact that a screw had come loose just over the border to Durham, I chatted to a German chap as we did a beautiful descent towards High Force Waterfall. I did a bit of a zigzag, so the wind was with me for about a third, the wind was against me as I went across the moors for about a third, and then the wind was with me as I climbed up towards Tan Hill Inn. Absolutely stunning golden light, but quite a cool breeze as I got there. Started off my tea with a hot chocolate and then had a glorious pie with a whole gallon of gravy. There was a band inside, but it was so beautiful outside that I stayed out and watched the sunset. Clear skies mean for a chilly night though, so I was glad of my metal water bottle that I filled with hot water, which kept my toes toasty. Had the morning accompaniment of lots of sheep outside of the tent all morning. I think they were calling to each other, but I don't know how they lost their lambs overnight. Decided rather than following a rocky route that I would follow the road instead. Some absolutely gorgeous views over the dales. Ate a really tasty breakfast roll and then a humongous chunk of carrot cake. I was shouted at by a peewit many times because I was evidently cycling near to their ground nests. Ended up on a pretty rocky path, which I could manage for like 3 kilometres until I could come off, but not the 16 kilometres that I planned as a route. But dropping down meant that I ended up at the Wensleydale Creamery, and I wandered around that cheese shop trying all the different types of cheese. Also rescued a lamb who'd ended up on the road, and I managed to scare it enough that it found the hole that it had squeezed through and squeezed back through to find its mum. The campsite had a barn, which was really good because it was very wet, but it was also in the shadow of some of the Yorkshire Three Peaks. Had a bit of a tough morning in day 8. It had been quite soggy overnight, and I woke up really late. There was also a worm in my cup, so I washed it thoroughly before I made breakfast. I reckon I'd underfueled the last day, and really needed some more chocolate milk, probably. Some fighter jets flew overhead during breakfast, though, which was very exciting. I then crossed into a bit of the Forest of Bowland and cycled some gorgeous rolling hills in between the Forest of Bowland and the Yorkshire Dales, stopping at a village hall to eat a very large, very, very tasty sandwich for lunch. Saw lots of old men on old bikes with old panniers. I was the only one at the campsite that evening, and it had 4 showers, so I could have had 4 showers in 4 different showers. I didn't, I only had 1, but the showers were in very cool converted horse boxes. Final day and final pack up of the tent was quite exciting. I semi-followed the route. I ended up cycling kind of roads parallel to the Pennine Bridleway, which I think is probably appropriate for like bikepacking bags and on a mountain bike, but not really for my heavily laden tour. A really steep descent and then a really steep hill, and some gorgeous views above the reservoirs before going down some exceedingly sketchy cobbles through Heptonstall into Hepton Bridge. I then followed Rochdale Canal all the way into Rochdale and then out of Rochdale back into Manchester. One last tighten of the screw that comes loose and was rattling, having gone over lots and lots of cobbles. A trip over the motorway bridge and some nosy cows, and then back into Manchester through Clayton Vale. They're not far from home. So that was that. My Garmin said 637.5 kilometres, which is just shy of 400 miles. I think I've concluded that I'm more of a road rider and more of a cyclotourer than a bike packer, but had so much fun.